Located about an hour northeast of Boston, a tour of Coffin House chronicles the evolution of domestic life in rural New England over 3 centuries. The structure, which contains the family's furnishings, began as a simple dwelling built in 1678 in the post-medieval style. The story of Coffin House begins in 1643 when young Tristram Coffin, Jr. emigrated from Devonshire, England, with his family to the new settlement of Newbury. 3 years later, all but one member of the Coffin family had left Newbury, leaving only 14-year-old Tristram, who is likely indentured to a local tradesman or a tailor named Henry Somerby. In 1654, at the age of 21, Tristram would marry Judith Somerby, Henry's widow. Judith had 3 children from her first marriage, and after marrying Tristram, she had 10 more. In 1675, Tristram would serve in King Philip's War, a full-scale conflict that resulted in indigenous peoples being forcibly removed from their ancestral lands. Tristram's son John and stepson Daniel were both killed during the fighting. After the conflict ended, Tristram, Judith, and their youngest children moved to a new home and the property that is now known as Coffin House. The original house, or part of it, survives as the back section, except for the small addition on the corner, which was added in the 19th century. Typical of 17th century New England buildings, the main facade faces south to take full advantage of the sun's warmth in winter. Tristram Coffin and his family lived, cooked, and slept in 2 or 3 rooms. Their possessions were few. This was designed for the comfort of elderly or ill family members. The rocking motion of a cradle provided adults with the same pain alleviation that it provides a child, and also helps decrease the incidence of bed sores and improve circulation. In 1712, the house was more than doubled in size to provide living space for a son and his family. Following the death of Tristram and Judith Coffin in 1704 and 1705 respectively, the house and land was inherited by their youngest son, Nathaniel, who was married with 8 children. The Coffins were financially stable and expanded the house significantly to provide more room for future generations. Nathaniel earned his living as a merchant tailor, but he would also start a tanning business that would sustain the family into the 1800s. A Coffin cousin who visited in the 1840s recalled the dresser to the right of the fireplace, filled with very bright pewter platters, plates, and porringers. Soon after completing the imposing front addition to the Newbury home, the Coffin family built this cupboard, designed for the display of the family pewter and the storage of other kitchen objects. The remarkable number of pewter chargers in place, notes Historic New England, is a testament to the Coffin family's increasing fortunes, but also reflected light back into the room as the cupboard faces a south window. In 1725, Nathaniel's son Joseph married Margaret Morse and brought her to the Coffin House to set up a new household. At the time, Joseph's parents and 3 of his siblings were still living there. Margaret and Joseph had 8 children of their own. In addition, Joseph purchased and enslaved a young woman named Lucy and gifted her to 2 of his daughters in 1771. The buttery was used to make and store dairy and other products for the household. It was shuttered for coolness and whitewashed for cleanliness. In 1755, Joseph's son Joshua married Sarah Bartlett and brought his bride back to the house where his parents continued to live. Joshua and Sarah had 12 children, 8 of whom survived to adulthood. Historic New England has a copy of the 1772 indenture between a Daniel Mitchell of Wells, Maine, and the Coffins. The agreement is that the Coffins will teach Daniel, quote, the art, trade, and mastery of a tanner during the term of 5 years, 7 months, and 75 days, and also to learn him to read and write legibly, and at expiration of term give him 2 good suits of apparel for all parts of his body, one for the Lord's Day, the other for working days, unquote. Edmund and Joseph Coffin legally divided the house in 1785, and it was their children, Joshua and Lucy, who lived in their separate spaces through most of the 19th century. Joshua Coffin graduated from Dartmouth College in 1817 and taught school for many years, numbering among his pupils the poet John Greenleaf Whittier, who addressed to him a poem entitled To My Old School Master. Coffin was ardent in his support of emancipation and was one of the founders of the New England Anti-Slavery Society in 1832. Meanwhile, Joshua's first cousin, Lucy, pictured here, lived her whole life in the front range of the house, becoming the sole resident after the marriage of her sister, Elizabeth. This space was known as the best parlor, as it contained the house's fanciest furniture. A printed label on the back of this piece notes that it was purchased from the Looking Glass store located at 10 State Street in Newburyport. Edmund Coffin married his second wife in 1809. The wedding perhaps provides the occasion for the purchase of this looking glass, a fashionable and expensive addition to the family's most public room. According to Historic New England, Lucy Coffin was musical, artistic, and scholarly, reading her Bible every morning in the original Greek. She lived her entire life in the house and made very few changes. By making few changes to her home, Lucy Coffin's preservationist mindset, notes Historic New England, kept the house authentic, and her dwindling family assets contributed to its preservation.